Early in my incarceration, my anger would get the best of me at times, and I had a very bad temper. It becomes a part of your essence, really. And I was thinking horrific thoughts to what I wanted to do to this guy when the gate cracked. I just got angrier and angrier, and I'm doing myself doing push-ups, listening to metal. I'm just getting totally jacked and juiced up. I kicked him centered in the chest, and he went flying down the stairs that were directly in front of us. He went down a pretty long flight of stairs, and honestly thought the guy died. I thought I bodied him. Greetings and salutations. I'm Victor Sordi, and welcome to my channel, 28 to Persevere. Thanks for watching. On today's video, I'm going to talk about the progressive nature of hate in prison. Hate in and of itself is a word that is thrown around quite often now to represent a person's anger or emotional turmoil or whatever it is they're dealing with in the moment. But the hate that I'm talking about is fueled by an underlying rage that gets progressively worse the longer you spend in prison. Prison in and of itself, its very foundation is predicated on hate, some form or another. It fuels a lot of guys in prison, myself included early in my bid. Hate was something that became a quintessential part of my everyday existence. I really wasn't the type of person initially that would wake up every morning angry at the world. I actually had a lust for life prior to being incarcerated. Every day was a party in my mind prior to this. I wasn't the type of person to go and look for trouble or try to start fights or anything of that nature. I wasn't very violently inclined to hurt anyone. I just believed that, well, when in my youth, that people can become adaptable and they can be understanding to that sense of what is different or not different. I was very naive as a child. I learned fast that naivete is very dangerous and it's a liability in prison. The wise man is really heeding the reality of the prison environment, an environment consisting of a mentality that is fueled by hatred. What we do follows from what we are. And in prison, the degree of hate that a person harbors is really something that is measured by how they hold themselves every day. And in prison, one thing I learned real quickly is that your hatred will literally permeate everything you do. It clouds your judgment. It fuels you in manners that are unseen to the naked eye, but you have inside you a festering rage, a darkness. And I identified with that early in my incarceration because I was very angry, very bitter, and it only grew in a manner that was hard to contain and to quantify. So I really tried to get a handle on that hatred later on in my early 30s and after I was married and settled in with children, which really put things in proper perspective for me as far as the value of not only my life, but the lives around me, even those that wished ill will on me for whatever reason it was in the environment that I lived in every day of my life in the prison system. But I understood that hatred, and I saw it on so many levels, from racial hatred to hate with the system or hate people that just hate to hate. I mean, it comes in all forms and fashions and colors and shapes and sizes, and literally defines a person in a large extent. And I understood this. And early in my incarceration, my anger would get the best of me at times, and I had a very bad temper when I was finally triggered. I would hold in a lot of it. I wasn't the type of person that would just throw down, quickly. I'd have to literally be antagonized to the degree that I no longer could tolerate the intolerable anymore. And lash out was the only alternative and option that I had left to do. In prison, that option comes about pretty quickly based on your environment, the people around you. Sometimes you're left with no choice but to react in such fashion. And there were times that I had to react in such fashion. There were moments when I was tried, or where somebody would try to pump me down in some fashion, or whatever it was. And I refused to allow that to happen, regardless if my life was on the line or not. I thought in a fashion that it was survival of the fittest, and I was going to survive no matter what, and at all expenses paid. It didn't matter to me. I was ready to cash the check and it didn't matter whatsoever whether or not I was willing to do or not do, and what the ramifications of that moving forward. But I realized this early, when I was in my early 20s and working out and being fueled by testosterone and the adrenaline of every day. The intensity level was off the charts. It's hard to have obviously expressed that in a fashion for someone to truly comprehend what I'm talking about as far as the intensity level was concerned. But there's this tension in prison when you walk the yard, or you're on the gallery, or in the blocks, or whatever it was. In prison, you really learn to identify with that tension. It becomes your waking moment of your life, your being. It becomes a part of your essence, really. And that type of anger. There was a moment I remember in particular. There was a guy that locked a few cells away from me. They used to be on the gate a lot, which means he's talking on the gate, going up to the bars and just popping shit or whatever. And this guy in particular, I knew to be a child molester, and he was just a deplorable character in every sense of the word. Who really didn't have that much prison time ahead of him, come to find out. But his crime was heinous, as all child molestations and any type of rapes are concerned are. And this individual used to get on the gate and just pop shit. It was amazing. He would talk in a fashion that he was the toughest guy on the planet, and he just didn't give a shit about anyone. And he was. I personally think now he was wanting somebody to take him out. I didn't know at the time, but I never interacted with the guy or anything like that. But he would just constantly antagonize people and talk down to people, and it was just really disrespectful. People would walk by his cell, and most of the time, child molesters know their place. They play the role, so to speak. But this particular guy, at this particular time, for whatever reason, didn't. And I remember one time I was out and about on the company and walking by his cell, and he said something to me. And as I said, I didn't open any doors with him. I didn't communicate with the man, but he said something in a derogatory fashion. He insulted me, and at the time, I warned him. I said, "Listen, man, watch the way you talk to me, and there are ramifications for actions in here." And he didn't give a shit. He was just like, fuck you, fuck off type of thing. But I think if I remember correctly, he asked me for a rollie, and obviously I didn't smoke, so I didn't have one. And he thought, well, you think you're better than me, basically, because you're not going to give me a smoke, and go fuck yourself, blah blah blah. And it just went from 0 to 60 quick. And I remember looking at this guy, and I'm thinking to myself, you're a child molester. You're the most deplorable human on the face of the earth in my mind. And I went back to my cell after this guy said what he said to me. I just closed my mouth and went back and was just festering on it, and the anger and the fuel and the rage. And I was thinking horrific thoughts to what I wanted to do to this guy when the gate cracked. I just got angry and angry, and I'm in my cell doing push-ups, listening to metal. I'm just getting totally jacked and juiced up. And when the gates cracked, I remember coming out, and he arrogantly walked by me, just smirked at me, and that was it, man. And I called him out. I was like, "Yo, what's up?" And he turns around, and I just hit him with everything I had, and dropped him obviously, and I picked him back up. And there was people around because the yards were going out, so there's people everywhere. And I picked him up, and I remember holding him by his shoulders and picking him up, and I just screamed his face. He hollered at his face, and I took a step back, and I just kicked him. I kicked him centered in the chest, and he went flying down the stairs that were directly in front of us. He went down a pretty long flight of stairs, and honestly thought the guy died. I thought I bodied him. And I remember people were telling me this. People were looking around. They saw me. They saw what happened, and guys were like, "Yo, Vic, head back to your cell, blah blah blah." And I was just sitting there staring at this guy, looking down, and thinking to myself, the hell did I just do? What's going on now? And then, nobody else saw it as far as the corrections were concerned. But I remember going back to my cell and just contemplating what happened with this dude. Come to find out, he was knocked out unconscious, and he was then escorted out and to the infirmary. Where I never saw the guy again. I'll never forget that. I mean, that was just something that I really had to do with double check my mentality. I had to keep myself in order and reflect retrospectively on what I was going to do moving forward. That type of anger. If this guy would have died or whatever, then obviously, I would have never gotten out of prison. And it's that fine line you walk in prison between life and death, and whether or not you'll ever see the light of day. So it's something that I remember extremely vividly, something that I believe that was a crossroads for me. I've always believed in life that we reach a point. It's called the crossroads, and it can happen. When you're early in your early 20s, your youth, or later on in your life. There's no exact time period for it, but it's the crossroads. It's the choices that you make, that you veer, and those choices, or multiple choices, just a singular choice that you make, will take you in a direction, and that direction is really going to lay out the opportunities before you, and the rest of that pathway that you're on, that your journey will go forth with that type of direction. That experience, I believe, not only was very pertinent to my life experiences in general, but I believe that experience in and of itself had a profound effect on me, because moving forward, I remember that any time I would bear witness to something that would unfold before me, if something was going to pop off between a couple of individuals I knew, or somebody that I had their back or whatnot, I would always try to do my best to squash it, to try to step in between, intervene, and to stop it from escalating, because I saw that unfolding in a fashion that would jeopardize the lives of the individuals I was dealing with. And a lot of the guys didn't have life, and they would put themselves in a position willfully, and sometimes they had no choice but to. And that might unfold in a fashion that they would end up with a life sentence after the fight or altercation or whatever it was unfolded. So I was really aware of that, and I held that focus inside me. I mean, I understood, the place is dark, the environment is dark, it permeates darkness, and you carry that with you, within you, and you have to try to find some sort of levity, some sort of enlightenment, something to inspire you in a fashion that would put some light into your life, or else you're going to be consumed by the darkness, because of the darkness and how dark it truly is. Most individuals that do their time, one way or another, they try to find themselves, and they might not willfully say this or even willingly want to, but themselves reveal themselves to themselves when they're in prison, and you truly see what you're capable of, not only tolerating and enduring, but the things you're willfully willing to do, to find your will to persevere, to tap into your reserves of strength and your fortitude and your ability to tolerate and endure things that the vast majority of people will never in their lifetime confront, or even truly understand, or even remotely uh, comprehend what it is that you're actually going through and actually confronting it each and every day. And it builds character, but it also destroys people. And I understood that for me, the anger that I had inside me, I was trying to release it in a fashion where I'm working out and through other channels. That was something proactive and productive. But also knew on the flip side of that, um, the violence around me unfolding constantly. If I fall into this way of life, that I'll never get out. And even if I did, I would be a raging lunatic at the point that I couldn't identify or adapt to the world beyond the wall. And I always kept the hope inside me that there was a possibility that one day I would get out, and to be the man that I know I'm capable of being, and someone that my children could be proud of, and my wife could be proud of, and my entire family, kith and kin, would be proud of living and being who I am. And that meant more to me than anything, and I never lost sight of that, even in my darkest times, prison, dealing with the horrific horror show that was my life every day. Thanks for watching. Until next time, go with the gods and persevere.